Hello everyone, this is Melek. Today I'm going to show you how to connect Mysql database in PHP and how to insert, update and delete the data from there. First of all, I used XAMPP to create a localhost and run the code there. We run Apache and Mysql and we go to admin. We have a database. I have a database created here. My database name is test, and in the test I have a table named employees. Here I have my table here, and I'm going to modify my database in PHP code. I'm going to show how I do it. I used Notepad. Firstly, I created menu. Here, as you can see, I created menu. In the menu, I basically determined and write the CSS code here for as front end of my code. As you can see here, this is how it looks like, the menu page, and of course I attach my PHP codes here in the menu page. The employee list, I'm going to show you the view of my table, and it's shown as employee list there, and when you click on it, it's go to employee list PHP here, this one, and I wanted to add employee to my table database, so I create employee form for it. So this one I attach. So when I click add employee, I will reach this page, this code I created, and then I wanted to delete the employee, so I create the employee form 1. This is the form I created, and I click on it, I reach that form, and then I wanted to update employee, and when I click update employee in my page, in my menu page, I reach employee form 2 PHP here I reach this page. So I'm going to show you how it works. This is my menu page. So when I click employee list, I get my table. This is employee table. This is my employee list, included ID, first name and last name of the employee. It's a basic table, not complex one. And then later, this is where I want to add employee. I write the first name and the last name. For example, Nancy Dave. I wanted to add a new employee named Nancy Dave, and I add employee. So this is 31 because before I try to add and delete the several try. So as you can see here, Nancy Dave added as a 31, and the ID, since ID is auto incremented in the Mysql database, so I don't need to insert an ID when I want to add an employee. And when I want to add employee, I just write the name and the last name, and the ID generated itself on the table, auto incremented itself, and it's added here. I'm going to show you the code for you. This is an employee form. Basically, I write the CSS code, how does it look like, the width, the padding, margin, and box sizing. And then my submit button, it's purple because I wrote the hex code of purple, so it's purple here, you can see. And there's no border, and the writing in it, add employee, it's white, and the padding, text decoration, and margin and cursor, it's here. And after the CSS code, the style of the page of the form, afterwards we include PHP code here, we include menu here to reach this page from the menu page, and then we create our form action runs this SQL PHP I'm going to show you later, and the method post because we want insert data there, data to our database, to our table. So we define label ID and the first name written here, it shows here first name, and the last name here it shows. And our input time text, basically we write text here, so it's text. Our input type is text, and the name, it's important because in the SQL form, in SQL, we use this name when we want to add the variable to our table. The name, what we write here, the name is first name, and the last name is the same here. We define the name as last name, and our submit button, and its value is at employee. It's the value, the writing here at employee, it's here, and this is our basically inserting table. In this page we insert data to our table. This is a form, and let's go to the SQL page. So this is our PHP form where we can add data to our table database, and this is the SQL. So we wanted to insert data. First of all, we define our server name, which is localhost. My username is Ruth, and there is no password for me. And my database name, as I told you before, this is test. And I create connection with MySQL function. Server name, username, password, and database name here, and I am going to check my connection. In case there is an error, it shows that there's a connection error and connection failed. Yes, and here basically the SQL query, we define our query here. We wanted to insert into employees table in my database. My table name is employees. I wanted to add first name and last name, and wanted to give values, the first name and last name written in my form. Here we define the name and first name, last name in my table here. So basically what I wrote in this box, it's added to my database, to my table. And then we connect the query, and I wanted to know that my last ID when I insert a new employee. So when I add new record, new employee, it shows that new record created successfully, and it shows the last inserted ID. As I told you, it's auto incremented, so that's why we didn't get the ID here. We just get the first name and last name. So it shows the last ID added into my table database, and if there is an error, it shows the error for me. and we basically close the connection, and this is in 1 second. Refresh and goes to the employee list and shows my list. Here let's try. Let's define a name. I basically add Dave Johnson. Let's add the employee, and it shows the last one, 32, and after 1 second it goes to the employee list and as 32 employee auto incremented ID, and it's Dave and last name is Johnson. It's added here. Let's go to our second form. We want to delete employee. I basically create a form, PHP form, so where you write ID, it's deleted that employee. That ID assigned to employee, it's deleted. So for example, we added 32nd employee. I wanted to delete it, so I insert ID 32 and I wanted to delete, and it goes basically my employee list, and 31 Dave Johnson is deleted in my table, in my database. So in this form I basically did the same thing, but the method here not posting, it's deleting. So our method is delete, and we use the SQL1 page. I use SQL1 PHP where I write the SQL query, and then we define the name again, the ID, and our submit button. Its value is deleting employee, it's here. And lastly, I want to update my employees. I want to update my employee. For example, let's change my surname. It's 11. My ID is 11. First name Melek. First name Melek and the last name Sarhan. Let's update, and it says it's updated successfully, but we forgot to add to refreshing and go to my list. So let's add this here, then it will refresh. So it's basically changed my surname. In our form, update form includes ID, first name and last name. So if ID isn't changed, first name doesn't change, and if an employee married and the last name is changed, so we can basically update our employee data here. Yes, this is basically the CSS code again, and then we include menu PHP, our file, and our form action goes to the employee SQL2, and our method is posting. Yes, we again define the variables. Our ID, first name and last name, we named them as ID, first name and last name as I did in previous form too. So let's go to the SQL. So again, our server name, username we defined, and we create connection to my database, tests, name tests, and this is really needed. We require employee form 2, this code, and I define ID and request ID. First name is first name and last name is defined last name here. I did it because I didn't do it. The code shows an error that these variables not defined, so that's why I defined in the form, and actually I defined in the SQL query, I needed to define these variables. Then our SQL query, we update my employees table and set first name as first name here, and last name is last name. We put comma between these variables, where this is important, where employee's ID is ID. So its ID is basically not changing here. Primary key, since it's a primary key, it's not changing and it's auto incremented. So if our query, SQL query, is true, it shows that record updated successfully. If there is an error, it shows the error for us, and then we refresh in 1 second the page to my list. We go to the list. This is the menu. Basically, when I click my employee list, I see the list. I can add employee here. I can delete the employee from the ID, update my employee data in case the last name can change, and we can use this code. We want to add, delete, insert, delete, or update our database. It's a basic example, PHP and SQL connection. Thank you for listening. Have a healthy and nice day.